So this is part 2 of the last blog post about the previous one. Sorry, about the this is part 2 of the Overwatch matchmaking post, essentially. Here we go. Go to the React section here. How's that look good? Does that look good, chat? Want me one more scroll in here? How's that looking? Okay. Overwatch 2 developer blog. Explaining matchmaker goals and plans part 2. Welcome back, heroes, for part 2 of our matchmaking series. In part 1, we talked about how matchmaking works. It's an incredibly complex system that needs to consider many different inputs to make every single game as fair as possible. For part 2, we're going to address some community concerns regarding the matchmaker from the perspective of the competitive game mode. Let's get into it, which I know a lot of people want to hear about this because matchmaking has obviously been a concern and it's been something people have really wanted to see changes for. So I'm really curious to read about that. So, TLDR, your rank games are formed based on your internal matchmaking rate in MMR, regardless of your displayed skill tier. This means that you have what you see as your rank and then what actually is your rank. MMR changes based on the result of each match with the amount of MMR you gain or lose depending on several factors, like how highly rated your opponents were or how recently you last played. Our team is aware of some community pain points in competitive and matchmaking. We have a set of improvements coming to matchmaking, and we're also working on updates to the competitive system. This is good to see. I like that they're going to be making improvements. Now, what are the improvements? For competitive play in Season 3, we'll reduce the number of wins between competitive updates from 7 to 5 or 20 to 15 losses. For our matchmaker, we're implementing the role delta changes that will match similarly ranked players within each role. So basically, if you're like a Plat 2 tank, it's probably going to look for like a Plat 2 tank. You know what I'm saying? The one thing I will say about this is I'm really curious to see what the 7 wins to 5 wins does. And what I mean is this. Do they have it based off of 7 wins initially that more than likely if you won 7 times there's a chance you'll rank up? Will this mean that you'll still need to get like 2 rank ups possibly to win? Because you would need to get, in order to get 7 wins, you would need to win 7 games, but you would have to get 10 wins to see that. Would it actually make it so you don't rank up as much? Or does that change now with 5 wins? Is it more frequent, how much you're climbing, how much you're not climbing, etc.? That is something I really want to see because I agree that it needs to be less wins, but I'm also curious to see if that changes like how often you're seeing that rank up. But going from 7 wins to 5, I like that they're doing that. Getting your competitive update much sooner is way better. Also, I do think it needs to be a UI change to be able to see that. So we'll see how that goes. And I really am curious to see how the games are now with the role delta changes. So for anybody wondering once again about role delta, it means basically rather than just kind of find like, oh, this game is evenly matched based off of all this, it's like this character, like this person, this hero, or not hero, like this person is pretty much around the same SR as the other role. So, okay, here we go. Oh, Season 4 will include additional information about your current wins and losses on the competitive update screens. This is a need. Like, this needs to happen. This is a necessity. I agree that you need to be able to see more information about that, and that's a good change. Our team has begun work on longer-term features and updates for both the matchmaker and competitive game mode, and we look forward to sharing more on those plans in the future. I agree. That needs to be done. Season 4, though, is quite a bit away. I was more expecting that would be like a Season 3 or like mid-season, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Here's what we're currently seeing in ranked. We've seen our feedback. We've seen your feedback on matches with wide skill variation. And we want to talk about a few reasons that could be happening, as well as our plans to address your concerns. We allow players to group together even when there's a difference in the MMR between party members. Outside of GM, you can only duo queue. And this is a major source of wide skill disparities in matches. We're working on some changes that will match parties with similar MMR disparities together more frequently, which we expect to noticeably reduce how often we make wide matches. So this is basically saying that with groups, they're trying to make it so it's a little bit closer. This will make it much less likely for a solo player or a party with a narrow skill disparity to end up in a match with a wide skill disparity. So so basically the goal of that is to make closer matches, is what I'm gathering with this. It seems to be the play. Often matches with a wide displayed skill tier difference still look very close when looking at the difference in MMR between the two teams. The partial rank reset at the beginning of the season may be exaggerating this by making it look like someone is lower than their actual rank. However, regardless of the seasonal reset, both skill tier and MMR can decay over time for players who are inactive for a considerable amount of time. But what is the considerable amount of time? I mean, they probably won't go and say that because then people might just like have accounts where they purposely won't play on it for a while, so it decays the MMR down. So they probably won't say that, but I'm curious on that one. Players who return may see dramatic shifts to their skill tiers as they resume playing regularly, and the game becomes more certain of that player's current skill. I mean, this is the thing. Like, if you don't play for 2 years and you come back to the game, say you were Diamond like 2 years ago, you may not be Diamond 2 years later. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what that means, though. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what that means. We've also seen the community, I mean, that's what it basically means there. We've also seen the community talk about inconsistent games or how some games feel incredibly one-sided. And that feedback has been helpful. There have been one-sided games. I think everybody in chat here, or everybody watching, can agree that you have games where, like, you'll have a team that you are dominating. You're like 30-1, the other team's like 1-30. And then the next game is the exact opposite. It just feels very one-sided. Understanding what causes one-sided matches and how to reduce their frequency has become a major focus, or a major area of focus, for our team. This is a tricky problem because one-sided matches can happen in Overwatch. Yes, I mean, that can happen. I think a lot of the time, what people are seeing, though, is it's happening more frequently. Even between balanced teams. So our first step has been able to study the problem and understand the various factors that can cause one-sided matches, and we're planning to share what we learn with you in a developer blog down the road. We got a part 3 coming. Is that going to be part 3? Competitive updates are another topic we've been exploring. We want you to feel a sense of progression. Okay, let's highlight this for a second. A lot of players have been talking about this. When players play the game, they want to see more and more of a sense of progression, and the current rank system kind of doesn't have that as much. It's just kind of like, it doesn't feel like you're seeing that progress for a while, and it might take a day, it might take 2, it might take a week to really see that progression. So this is something that really needs to, I imagine they're trying to address, because I know a lot of people want to see something with this. Without needing to focus on super granular number like a skill rating, but we feel and agree with the community that competitive updates are a bit too infrequently currently. Which is, I mean, I agree. I agree. Here's the direction we're taking moving forward. Okay. What we're doing in Season 3, based on community feedback, we're implementing some updates to the matchmaker that try to place pairs of players with similar MMR on each role on either team. This is the role delta that was referenced. This means that opposing tanks should be more similarly matched than before, and likewise for other respective roles. That way you have people at similar skill level playing against the same role. Basically, instead of having like a Master's Widow in your Plat game, and then a Plat Widow, which obviously the Master's Widow might have the advantage there, or should have the advantage, it's going to look for like a Plat Widow and a Plat Widow. The goal with this change is to make the average MMR between each role more evenly matched to each other instead of looking more broadly across the entire team to balance things out. This is a major change to the matchmaker, so we'll be actively monitoring for any unintended side effects. What this means is that they have to make sure that there isn't still one-sided games. So for example, it's going to look to make a game more based off of the role than like being like, okay, we have a average of a Plat 3 game here versus a Plat 3 game, but if you look at like... if you look at some of the changes across the board here, like, let's take a look at this. This, you know, there's a Master's tank and a Diamond tank. That's what they're trying to get rid of here to make it a little bit more evenly matched. We've seen this feedback that having to play as many as 26 matches to get an update has been discouraging for players. Starting with Season 3, you'll now get a competitive update with every 5 wins and 15 losses. So we read about this earlier. In the mid-season patch for Season 3, we're also updating the UI, so information about your progress towards a competitive update will always be viewable. Finally. Everybody here knows since, like, you guys have been watching since day 1 of this, okay? This needs to happen. I talked about it. Not everybody has a sticky note, you know, next to their computer, writing down how many wins they need to their matches, or going into there trying to multiply by 7 on wins in their menu. This right here was a necessity, and I'm glad it's happening. So the mid-season patch will have this. I am glad to see this. This needs to be in the game. This will at least show you how close you are to be able to finally get there. I agree with this one. Also, beginning with our mid-season patch, top 500 players will see their top 500 leaderboard rank updated after every match rather than competitive updates. Actually, we don't see our rank in competitive updates. It just says top 500. We actually don't see the rank. As far as I can remember or tell, we actually don't see the rank. And I'm just checking one thing, chat. We don't see the rank. It just says, hey, by the way, you're top 500, and that's it. That's it. Just your top 500. All right, what we're doing in the near future. We've heard your feedback and confusion around seasonal rank decay and rank resets. Starting with Season 4, we're planning to remove seasonal competitive rank resets and all current and past seasonal rank decay. That is going to be interesting. That is a big change. And what happened with a lot of players and what I've seen feedback-wise is players do not like the idea of having to win 7 games, go through all those rank updates, and then basically get reset at the end of the season. Now, in some games, this has worked specifically because they actually show you your progress. So I think in games like Apex and Valorant, you actually have like an XP bar, right? So you had a little better idea of where you're going to be at. But in Overwatch, we don't have, there isn't that. So getting rid of this, at least as of now, is probably something that a lot of people will like, because you're not going to have to worry about your rank resetting. Now, that doesn't mean that your MMR might not reset or something like that. I don't know. It actually says no, past seasonal rank decay. So yeah. I don't know. I don't know what this means. Current and past seasonal rank decay. Yeah, so I think like a lot of people will be able to be at the rank they were before when the season starts now. So you won't have to like try to grind all the way back up based off of that, chat. Although you know what this means for one thing, chat? This is a good change for everybody. I know a lot of people like this. This also means no more 3 stacks with Seagull and Flats on on our main roles, because at the beginning of seasons, because they had this, we were able to 3 stack. But overall, I think this is it's going to be good for it's going to be good for players who don't want to have to grind back up, because it can sometimes take a while. And when the current rank system did not feel like you could really get back to where you were, especially when you had to win 7 games and you had no idea when you're going to rank up again with that stuff. So this will allow for people. It's a good change. It's a good change. Now, granted, this could change later on if they come up with a different style of their rank system, but I think overall, most people are going to see this and be happy with that. So we'll see. We'll continue to build out competitive updates in Season 4 when we add information about your current wins and losses to the competitive update screens. We're hoping this additional context will help you better interpret changes to your skill tier and division in the update. We're also looking into possible ways to provide you with more information about the matchmaking quality of your game. All of this is needed. More information, the better. I agree. Long-term plans and goals. In the long term, we're planning to provide new ways for players to share a challenging competitive experience in Overwatch 2. We'll share more on this down the road. That said, matchmaking improvements are an evergreen area of focus for the team, and we'll stay focused on testing and deploying continuous improvements to our matchmaking algorithm. It's very important they do that, because a lot of people have talked about the matchmaking, and one thing that people really want to see, people like to play Overwatch, but the matchmaking has for sure been a bit of an issue. People want to see matchmaking changes. Continuously looking at matchmaking is a good step, and I hope we see more changes consistently. Obviously, ranked will never be like perfect with how it is. Matchmaking can never be perfect with a bunch of variables, but having it be a better experience across the board is a key part. So I'm glad they're looking into that and consistently doing that. Finally, we'll continue to watch your feedback and improve upon the overall ranked experience over time. Our goal continues to be delivering matchmaking that feels fair and balanced for everyone. I mean, that's what everybody wants. Closing thoughts. The goal of our matchmaker is to make each match as fair as possible, meaning your team has an equal chance of winning or losing each individual match. Well, that would be good. We firmly believe the most fun games in Overwatch are when they are fair, and our team is committed to discovering and implementing new changes and updates that align our game with that goal. Yep. Overwatch 2 is a continuing evolving experience with new game modes, new heroes, and new maps to explore. This also means we need to provide a constantly updated experience, yes, that can deliver the fairest possible matches through effective changes to how our matchmaker works and through clear communication with all of you. We look forward to seeing you on the battlefield. Overall, I mean, it's the changes are going to be good, right? So, like, obviously on paper, the changes look good. Now we're going to have to see how they are when they're actually applied to the game. Do you deliver... Oh, I got to the frequently asked questions here, chat, and all right. Do you deliberately place players into winner's queue and loser queues? There are no winner or loser queues in Overwatch. Your current MMR is the only thing the matchmaker takes into consideration when forming your matches. The matchmaker doesn't force a 50% win rate on anyone, nor do we favor certain players over others. At its core, our matchmaker is a mathematical formula used to place similarly ranked players together in a match with the goal of creating as fair of games as possible. I'm gonna be honest with you, chat. When I read this blog, the last thing I expected to read was a frequently asked questions that talked about winner's queue and loser queue. Because obviously that's talked about a lot. So to see that, like, I just did not expect that. That came out of nowhere. I'm like, all right, onto the blog post. I scrolled down. I'm like, holy crap. That's the first one they went with. Why do I sometimes have a large win or loss streak? Sometimes if a player goes on a very long win/loss streak, it's indicative that their internal rating is not well calibrated. The best way to calibrate your rank is to continue playing competitively. The more data we have, the closer you'll get to a rank that best represents your skill. However, there are times when players are going to get lucky with their win streaks or the opposite with loss streaks. We're investigating this and we'll be testing some changes to see if we can reduce this kind of streaking in the future. So, what this sounds like to me is that they're saying that when you go on a win streak, it tries to find you into quicker rank games quickly. So if you go on a win streak and you win a bunch in a row, there's more than likely you're going to end up in a rank that it probably doesn't want you at specifically yet, which then puts you on a losing streak. That's what it feels like. That's what it seems like they're saying with that one. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how that one goes. All right? All right, on to the next question here. Does my competitive rank affect matchmaking? We only create matches based on players' MMR, not the visible competitive rank. A player's visible rank will move towards their rating over time as they continue to play during a season. Hi, buddy. Yeah, I agree. I agree. So we'll see. When we decay ranks at the beginning of the season, this has no effect on players' underlying ratings, although this is changing into Season 4. I mean, this is the hidden MMR thing we've talked about. Why does the quality of my matches go down at the start of the season? When Season 2 went live, a lot of players who stopped playing during Season 1 came back, so the population of players playing ranked changed dramatically overnight. Ratings are a measure of your skill relative to the rest of your players you interact with. Events that cause the population to change a lot will result in some turbulence. We're exploring some ideas for how to tackle this in the future. Let's talk about this very quickly, chat. You know how we've always talked about beginning of season games and end of season games? This is exactly what I'm referencing right here. This is remember how I always told you that beginning of the season games and end of the season games are wild? They're quite the treat. This is exactly what that is. Players will take breaks. At the end of the season, players will come to the game to either finish their placements or to either go for what they're going for. Other people are just kind of like waiting for the next season. That's why end of season and beginning of season are always a bit scuffed. Always have been. Always have been. From Season 1 of Overwatch to, well, we're on Season 2 of Overwatch, but Season 1 of Overwatch, Overwatch 1, all the way through that. All right. Wow, this is a lot here. I did not expect this. Can we do a full rating reset? A full rating reset wouldn't create a great experience since it would mean throwing out all the knowledge we have about players. This would cause new players to be matched against OWL pros, which is fun for about 30 seconds. We've experienced this ourselves in internal playtests. Listen. I still remember the time that Siegel was playing May in one of those playtests, and let me tell you, I don't think Siegel played May. It was Flats has told the story. I've told the story a bit. It is something. It is something. To be clear, ratings aren't a 100% accurate representation of every player's skill. Some players aren't in the right spot, but the system is a vast store of knowledge about the relationship and skill between millions of players, most of whom have never even directly played against one another. That's kind of interesting. Ooh, here we go. Oh yeah, Craig. Oh, I know. Why am I hard stuck at a low rating that doesn't reflect my skill? Ultimately, the only way you can increase your rating is to win more matches than you lose. Since we're putting any given player on a random team with 9 random other players with enough matches, that player's contributions are the only constant factor throughout. So their rating should end up reflecting their skill. There are some interesting phenomena here, though, that make this more complicated. For example, we have data showing that matches become less predictable the lower the average rating of a match. Predictability is a measure of how likely the favored team is to win because two teams never have identical ratings. One team is always going to be slightly favored for a variety of reasons. Team coordination, gameplay mistakes, and new players who are trying out different roles and 30-plus heroes. The result is that we get a little bit less signal to use calibrate ratings. We're working on some ways to use the signal we get more clearly, so stay tuned. So basically, what this is saying is sometimes the matchmaker can't necessarily take into account gameplay mistakes, team coordination, new players, you know, somebody's monitor turns off, etc. That's what it sounds like here. So, you don't take the number of eliminations, damage dealt, healing provided, or any other scoreboard stats to adjust my MMR after each match? What if you go 0-10? In Overwatch 2, your MMR adjustments are after every match is not impacted by your performance in each match, regardless of your skill tier. This is for a few reasons. We don't want players to be focused on doing things other than trying to focus on the objective and win the match. I'm going to be honest with you, people already do that. What do you mean? People are already doing this. If I can get somebody to go on the cart, I am celebrating that. That is amazing. If I have a teammate who's willing to push the cart and I'm not sitting on the cart AFK essentially trying to get that cart going, that's already happening. But anyway, Dealing the most damage or getting kills won't help your team if your actions don't help them push the payload or capture a control point. Yeah, but if they went 40 and 10 and they lost, they still went 40 and 10, so they're excited about that. Also, for some heroes, especially those in the support role, it can be challenging to determine if the numbers they produce reflect their skill. Are you trying to say that when I have 10 damage on Kiriko with 20,000 healing, I'm not playing? I'll have you know that I have to heal my teammates because they are clearly pushing in and I am playing perfectly, okay? So that stat is correct and my support should be higher than that, all right? Whatever rank I'm at right now. I'm just saying. Oh, what is this? Why do streamers and pro players often have such long queue times and often end up in poor quality matches? I think the real question is why, how come every time we see the streamers on the Tank Q podcast, and we'll talk about it right now. Perhaps the largest factor that influences match quality is just the population of players at the skill level. Top 500 is a small population compared to the millions of players at lower ranks. Towards the center of the rating curve, there are tons of players in the matchmaking queue for us to choose from, all of whom would allow for a good match. So it's much easier for us to ensure a good quality match. Contrast this with OWL pros who make up something like 0.00001% of the Overwatch player population, where players at the very top is very hard to guarantee a good experience because there are just so few players. Fundamentally, it often comes down to a hard trade-off between making worse matches or dramatically increasing queue times. And they're unfortunately already very long for these players. We have some changes coming that should improve match quality for high MMR players, and we're talking about even more sophisticated things we could do in the future. Does this mean my queues are going to be longer? And the reason why I asked that question is it said, we have some changes coming that should improve match quality. It doesn't say we have some changes that should improve match or queue times or anything. It's just match quality. Does that mean we're going to get longer queues, but... You said longer podcasts? Longer queues equals more content for YouTube? Not wrong. We need people to start submitting the play of the games, submitting the TikToks. Overall, chat, I'm going to be honest with you. This blog had a lot of information I did not expect. Like these questions they kind of went into, it was very interesting because usually they don't really talk about a lot of this stuff, like losers queue, like hidden MMR stuff, like why they haven't done a full like SR reset, hard stuck. Like I did not expect any of these topics in this. And they were like, listen, you know what? You want to talk about some ranked right now? We're going to talk to you about everything here. You want to know about losers queue? Here you go. You want to know about being hard stuck? Well, guess what? Guess what? Unlucky. You want to talk? Hey, you're 50 and 2. Should you climb more? No. No. Push the cart. Just push the cart. Okay? Doesn't matter if you have 50 limbs. We're not pushing the cart. You know what? This is quite an informative blog post. I honestly, like... I did not expect that, but I prefer this type of communication rather than being like, yeah, you know, we're gonna, you know, we're looking into it, right? I like this type of communication. They're like, you know what? Here you go. You want to know how this stuff works? This is how it works. I like that. I like what they did with that. I think that was actually like, overall, I'm glad they answered a bunch of the questions they did because I feel like that was an informative post, and I did not expect some of that information that they posted there. So anyway.